The moment I threw myself off the roof of the hospital, I happened to crash right in front of Jennifer. The woman didn't cry and she didn't scream. She just fiercely shielded Julian in her arms. Frowning, she spat out 2 words, "Bad luck." Then she turned around, holding that man, and walked away coldly. Later, I became a wandering ghost. I stayed by Jennifer's side for many years. I watched her marry Julian and have a child with him. Eventually, the two of them fought constantly, until their lives were completely shattered. Yet Jennifer still spoiled him, until Julian's side was filled with clones who looked exactly like me. Jennifer would just sit to the side and watch them have fun. She would sit there for an entire day. In the 8th year after I jumped from the building, Julian showed his true colors. He set a fire and burned Jennifer to death in the villa. Jennifer died. Julian took her money to support other women. I used all my strength to float to Jennifer's grave. Pointing at the tombstone, I laughed out loud. "Look at that, Jennifer. I told you a long time ago that Julian was a leech. But you just wouldn't believe me." Snapping my eyes open, I stared hard at the digital clock on the wall. 3 o'clock in the morning. I touched my racing heart, gasping for breath. I was still alive. That long, realistic despair just now was only a dream. I let out a long breath, wiping the cold sweat from my forehead, curses echoing in my mind. Fuck that. Thank God I didn't die. Because in the past, I really loved Jennifer more than my own life. Just yesterday, I even threw a massive, dramatic tantrum, threatening to hang myself. In a few days, it would be my 20th birthday party. The old man was going to announce at the banquet my engagement to Jennifer, but Grandpa absolutely refused to agree, saying the family values of her house were completely rotten and that Jennifer kept all kinds of sketchy men around her. But back then, I was blinded by infatuation. My eyes stung with tears. The old man suddenly snapped his eyes open, thinking about how Grandpa, because of me in that dream, was forced by Jennifer to jump into the ocean to his tragic death. "Are you trying to scare the dead awake in the middle of the night?" The old man was fast asleep. The blanket had slipped onto the floor. I picked up the blanket and covered him with it, crouching beside the bed. My eyes welled with tears as I sniffled, and the old man suddenly snapped his eyes open. Seeing a giant face right at his bedside, he shivered in fright. "Damn it. Are you trying to summon ghosts in the middle of the night?" My nose tingled with emotion, and I hugged the old man's leg tightly. He let out a sigh for me, patting my head. "All right. Stop crying. Tomorrow I'll swallow my pride and go finalize the marriage with her family for you." A chill ran through my entire body, and I instantly cut off my crying. In the dream, it was exactly because I threw this fit that Grandpa finally compromised. But 3 years after the engagement, Jennifer broke her promise. On that rainy night in the dream when she broke both my legs, she stepped on my face, her glare like a knife. "What makes you think you're worthy of touching Julian? I'm ruining both your legs today, to see what else you can use to hurt him." A wave of cold air rushed up my spine. I suddenly stood up and stared at Grandpa. "Grandpa, I'm not getting engaged to Jennifer anymore. I don't love her. I was just making a bet with Mouse." I swallowed hard, spinning a lie. If I could win Jennifer over, Mouse would lose a rare, limited edition RTX 5090 graphics card to me. The old man froze, then burst into a roar of laughter. He smacked the back of my head. "A stupid graphics card, and you dared to risk your entire life on a bet?" I kept my head down, saying nothing. The old man laughed so hard that tears came to his eyes. "Tomorrow, Grandpa will wire you $5 million. Buy whatever card you want. Are you really not going through with it?" I nodded heavily. "If I have my own money to spend, why the hell should I still grovel for her?" Grandpa exhaled a long sigh of relief, and I went back to my room. I scooped up Aries, the golden retriever, on the floor. My phone suddenly vibrated, the screen flashing with the name Chloe, my biological mother, who had been kicked out of the house for having an affair. I pressed answer. A cold female voice came from the other end of the line. "I heard you're getting engaged to Jennifer." I let out a cold laugh. "Rising from the dead at midnight just to ask about this?" The other side paused for a moment, her tone leisurely. "The two of you aren't a good match. She only has Julian in her heart. Of course I knew that. But right now, I just wanted to spite her to death. How do you know unless you try? Maybe Jennifer just liked someone obedient like me. If you want to stop me, feel free. If she ends up killing you one day, I'll buy a pack of firecrackers to set off at your grave." Without waiting for her to say another word, I hung up directly. Lying on the carpet, I rubbed Ares's belly and said with a smile, Ares, from now on, I'm done being a desperate simp. We're going to live the good life and make it to 99. The next day, I got up extremely early, changed into sportswear, and headed out the door with Ares. I had an appointment with a boxing coach today. What happened in the dream felt too real. I had to improve my combat abilities. Passing through the front yard, I stopped in front of a patch of blue campanulas. Back when my brain was filled with mush, I heard that Julian had pulled up Jennifer's favorite blue campanulas, making her cry. So I bought saplings overnight and planted them all over my yard, right across from the window of Jennifer's villa. Looking at these flowers now, I only felt disgusted. I walked over, grabbed the flower stems, and ripped them out by the roots. Handful after handful, I threw them all into the nearby trash can, clapping the dirt off my hands. I looked up and locked eyes with someone on the opposite second-floor balcony. Jennifer was wearing a silk bathrobe, holding a cup of coffee. Her expression was so dark, it could literally drip water. This gaze was exactly the same as when she broke my legs in the dream. I averted my eyes, whistled, and walked toward the garage. Just as I drove the SUV out of the main gate, I saw Jennifer wearing a haute couture suit, holding her bag and blocking the middle of the road. I honked the horn. She didn't move. My anger flared up, and I rolled down the window. CEO Jennifer, are you trying to get hit on purpose? Jennifer walked over and looked down at me. My car is in the shop. Take me to the office. It's not on my way. I refused bluntly. I'll call a rideshare for you. No need. Jennifer pulled open the car door directly and sat in the passenger seat. She sat very close, the scent of her perfume drifting straight into my nose. My stomach churned instantly, thinking of the methods she used to torture me in the dream. The veins on the back of my hand holding the steering wheel bulged. I ran a hand through my hair in frustration. Jennifer, I'm in a hurry. The woman stared at me, an analytical look in her eyes. Where are you going? What does that have to do with you? Drive. Woof, 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 woof. Ares suddenly barked wildly from the back seat. Jennifer was startled, her brows knitting together tightly. Throw the dog out, or draw me off ahead. At the subway entrance, without a shred of hesitation, I slammed the gas pedal all the way down. The SUV surged forward like a wild beast. During the morning rush hour in the city, I managed to drive the car with the intensity of a rally race. In the past, just to please her, I didn't even dare to slam the brakes while driving. Damn it! Are you crazy? Slow down. Jennifer gripped her seatbelt, her face turning pale. I looked coldly into the rearview mirror. If you think it's too fast, get the hell out. 5 minutes later, the car slammed to a sudden halt. I stopped steadily at the subway entrance. When she got out of the car, Jennifer's face was pale with anger. Pushing open the car door, she gnashed her teeth and barked, Damn it! I don't like men who act crazy. None of my fucking business. The moment she shut the door, I slammed the gas pedal to the floor, and a cloud of exhaust burst from the tailpipe. As the car instantly disappeared around the street corner, Jennifer stood right where she was, gripping her bag tightly, her eyes completely filled with coldness. A Maybach pulled up right beside her. The assistant got out, opened the door, and said smoothly, Ma'am, please get in. Is there something wrong? In the corporate penthouse office, the secretary carefully placed a velvet box on the desk. CEO Jennifer, this is the custom engagement ring set you ordered 6 months ago. Jennifer opened the box. The 2 diamond rings were completely unique in the world. She stared at the rings, yet her mind was filled entirely with my cold face from this morning. Both when I was pulling up the flowers and when I was speeding, a sudden wave of irritation surged in her heart. Her phone vibrated. The screen displaying Julian, Jennifer answered, her voice softening. Hello. Her voice softened. Hello. I heard you were getting engaged to that loser. On the other end of the line, Julian's voice carried a suppressed, tearful sob. Jennifer leaned against the back of her chair and pinched the bridge of her nose. Yeah. Jennifer, please don't throw away a lifetime of happiness just out of spite, okay? That loser doesn't deserve you at all. Hearing this, Jennifer's eyes turned cold. Julian, that's none of your business. He is obedient and sensible, making him the most suitable candidate for a strategic marriage. Obedient and sensible? Julian let out a sharp laugh over the phone. Jennifer, you were fooled by him. You think he loves you? You think he planted those blue campanulas for you? Jennifer's hand holding her cigarette stiffened abruptly. What do you mean? Julian sneered. I was at a bar last night. You think he planted those blue campanulas for you? The only reason he agreed to the marriage is not because he loves you at all. He did it to win a bet against Mouse. And the wager was just a stupid computer graphics card. The lighter in Jennifer's hand was crushed forcefully, breaking into pieces. Plastic shards dug into her palm, oozing lines of blood. What did you say? He's just a liar. He treated you as a mere tool to win a graphics card. Jennifer hung up the phone immediately. She stared intently at the engagement rings on the desk, her chest heaving violently. She had read countless people throughout her life. How could she possibly have misjudged him? Whenever that loser looked at her, his eyes were clearly full of humility and devotion. But his abnormal behavior this morning, the uprooted flowers, the cold, detached eyes, all had a logical explanation now. He didn't love her anymore. Or rather, he thought he already had the bet completely won. Fine. Very well. Jennifer let out a cold laugh, a surge of murderous intent flashing in her eyes. You bastard. Since you dared to use me for a bet, I will play along with you for the next 3 months. I will make you fall in love with me like a dog, begging me on your knees to marry you. And then, on the day of the engagement, I will stomp you right into the mud. Jennifer grabbed her coat and marched out of the office. Pass down the order. Acquire every single gaming and esports business owned by Mouse's family. I want that graphics card brand to completely vanish from the market by tomorrow. On the other side, inside the underground boxing gym, I delivered a ferocious left hook, smashing my sparring partner directly against the guardrail. With a loud thud, the sparring partner slid to the floor, spitting out a mouthful of bloody water, looking at me in utter terror. I wiped off my sweat, a ruthless look in my eyes. Too weak. Bring in someone who can actually fight. If even your boss can't beat me, this boxing gym might as well shut down early. The sparring partner shivered as he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Boss. Someone is tearing the place apart. Yes, it's the young master of the family. A deep female voice came from the other end of the line, carrying a hint of amusement. So he finally stopped being a submissive dog and turned into a mad dog instead? Lock the doors tight. I'll go meet him myself. The instant I heard that voice, the blood in my entire body ran cold. I wouldn't forget this voice even if I died. In that dream, it was her. Who handed Jennifer the iron rod that broke both my legs? I stared fixedly at the heavy iron door as it was pushed open. Walking inside was a woman wearing a tight black tank top and combat boots. She had short hair and eyes like a wolf. She was the uncrowned king of the underground boxing scene, and also the most ruthless enforcer under Jennifer, known as the Night Crow. In the dream, when Jennifer broke my legs, Night Crow was standing right by their side smoking a cigarette, saying with a laugh, CEO Jennifer, his bones are quite brittle. A couple more strikes and they'll be crushed into dust. I clenched both my fists, my knuckles cracking loudly. Young master, you seem to have a lot of fire in you. Night Crow vaulted up onto the ring, spitting out the gum from her mouth and twisting her neck. I heard you complain that my people are too soft. I didn't waste any words. With a fierce push off the ground, my entire body shot forward like a cannonball. There was no testing the waters. I went straight for a lethal move, a whip kick tearing through the air, aiming right for her temple. Night Crow's expression changed slightly as she raised her arms to block. Boom! The heavy sound of impact echoed through the gym. Night Crow was knocked back half a step by the sheer force of my kick, a bright red mark instantly appearing on her arm. Interesting. Night Crow licked the corner of her mouth, her eyes becoming completely thrilled. It looks like CEO Jennifer misjudged you. You're no lapdog. You're clearly a Tibetan Mastiff. Shut up! I closed in again, throwing punches. In rapid succession, every hook aiming for a vital spot. The excruciating pain of my broken legs from the dream screamed frantically through my nerves. I channeled all of my fear and hatred directly into my fists. The two of us traded brutal blows in the ring, every punch landing heavily against flesh. 5 minutes later, I was gasping for air, a trickle of blood leaking from the corner of my mouth. Night Crow was in even worse shape. She had been slammed onto the ground by my shoulder throw, unable to get back up for a long time. I walked over and stomped my foot hard onto her chest, looking down at her. Go back and tell Jennifer. Do not come looking for trouble with me. Otherwise, the next thing that breaks will be her legs. Night Crow coughed up a mouthful of blood, but burst into a maniacal laugh. You think you can escape, kid? CEO Jennifer just gave the order to completely blacklist and destroy the business of your brother, Mouse. You might have won the graphics card, but you just lost your brother's entire livelihood. My pupils shrank violently. Jennifer, that insane woman. I pulled my foot back sharply, grabbed my coat, and rushed outside. Just as I ran out of the boxing gym, a line of black Mercedes G-Wagons completely blocked off the entrance to the alley. The car door pushed open, and Jennifer walked down, wearing a black trench coat and high heels. Several bodyguards instantly surrounded me in a tight circle. She walked up to me, looked at the trace of blood on the corner of my mouth, and raised her hand, seemingly wanting to wipe it away from me. Disgusted, I turned my head away and took a step back. "Don't touch me." Jennifer's hand froze in midair, a flash of dark malice flickering through her eyes. She pulled her hand back and let out a cold laugh. "You've really grown some spine. To think you actually dared to play me for a stupid graphics card." "So what if I did?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I'm not getting married anymore, and I'm not playing your game either. Leave Mouse's family alone, and come at me instead." "Come at you?" Jennifer took a step forward, her face almost pressing against the tip of my nose. Her warm breath brushed against my face, her voice turning incredibly dark. "What makes you think you get a say? Since the game has already started, the only one who can call it off is me." She suddenly grabbed my collar tightly, pinning me against the car door. 3 months. Within 3 months, I will have you kneeling on the ground, begging me to marry you. If you don't believe me, just you wait and see. Looking at her face right in front of me, I suddenly smiled. "Jennifer, are you out of your mind?" I slapped her hand away fiercely and straightened my clothes. "I feel like throwing up just looking at you now." "Begging you? Keep dreaming." With that, I shoved right past the bodyguard's shoulders and walked away. Jennifer stood where she was, watching my retreating figure, her fingernails digging deeply into her palms. A bodyguard asked in a low voice, "CEO Jennifer, should we bring the young master back by force?" "No need." Jennifer turned around and got into the car. Her voice was chillingly cold. "Cut off all of Gary's family funding lines immediately. I want him crawling in front of me, with absolutely nothing by tomorrow morning." Not even 10 minutes after I left the alley, the phone in my pocket vibrated frantically like a death knell. The screen flashed with the name, Mouse. I pressed answer, and the harsh sound of shattering glass mixed with angry shouting instantly blasted into my ear. "Gary? Jennifer?" That crazy bitch made her move. Mouse's voice was incredibly hoarse, carrying a exhaustion he couldn't hide. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching loudly against the asphalt road. The SUV pulled over and came to a steady stop. "Tell me clearly, what happened?" "Half an hour ago, the legal department of the Lu Group personally led people to storm into our 5 companies. They teamed up with a few venture capital firms to forcefully initiate acquisition procedures. Our family's cash flow was already tight, and now it's completely cut off." On the other end, Mouse lit a cigarette, the sound of the lighters. Flint Wheel was exceptionally clear. "It's not just my family. Several major projects of your family have also had their funding unilaterally cut off by Jennifer. The banks are all demanding immediate repayment." My chest felt as heavy as a waterlogged sponge. Jennifer had used this exact same trick in the dream. She was used to using money to break everyone's spine, forcing her prey to obediently crawl back to her feet. "Mouse, I'm sorry. I'm the one who dragged you into this." I clenched my jaw tight. "Cut the bullshit." Mouse suddenly raised his voice, making the phone speaker buzz. "The two of us grew up together like brothers. Why the hell are you saying that to me? I've been sick of that Jennifer woman for a long time. Does she really think having money means she can rule the entire city?" The noisy sound of people urging him to sign documents came through the phone. Mouse took a deep drag of his cigarette, his tone turning fierce. "Listen up, bro. Even if I have to sell everything I own and declare bankruptcy, or go apply screen protectors under a bridge for a living, I will absolutely never let you bow your head to that crazy woman. If you dare go back to simp for her, I will cut ties with you instantly." Before I could speak, Mouse hung up the phone directly. Listening to the dial tone on the phone, I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the horn letting out a sharp, tragic blare. "Jennifer, you really are ruthless enough." Returning to the family's old estate, the atmosphere in the courtyard was frighteningly heavy. Grandpa was sitting on the traditional armchair in the main hall, rolling 2 walnuts in his hand. Several heads of the subsidiary companies stood to the side, sweating profusely out of anxiety. "Old master, the Lu family is trying to destroy us completely. Once our capital chain is broken, when the stock market opens tomorrow, our stock will definitely hit its daily limit down. Yeah, CEO Jennifer sent word out that if the young master is willing to go admit his mistake, everything can be easily negotiated." I marched across the threshold and the several managers instantly shut their mouths, their eyes darting away guiltily. All of you, get out. Grandpa didn't even lift his eyelids, but his voice was resonant and powerful. As if granted a royal pardon, everyone quickly backed out. Only the two of us, grandfather and grandson, were left in the main hall. I walked up to Grandpa and fell to my knees on the stone floor with a thud. Grandpa, I've caused trouble. Grandpa stopped rolling the walnuts in his hand, his cloudy eyes staring at me for a long moment. He stood up, walked over to me, and kicked me in the shoulder. The force wasn't heavy, but I still took the momentum to sit down on the floor. You worthless boy. When you were making a dramatic fuss over a woman and acting like it was life or death, why didn't you think about the dignity of our family? Grandpa let out a cold snort, turned around, pulled a black card out of a drawer, and threw it into my lap. Our family hasn't fallen yet. This old man can still handle this little bit of wind and waves. Take the money and go bail out Mouse's family. The men of our family must never let their brothers down. I clutched that black card, which still carried his body heat, my eyes burning. Grandpa, I will never bow my head to her. Get out and do what you need to do. Even if the sky falls, this old man will hold it up. The next morning at 10:00 a.m., at the Lu Group headquarters building, the entire building was decorated as if for a grand celebration. Inside the media hall on the first floor, cameras and recording equipment were packed tightly together. Every prominent media outlet in the city had been invited. On the massive screen, an announcement about the Lu Group's acquisition of the esports industry rolled continuously. I wore a black windbreaker, holding the leash of Aries, my golden retriever. As I stood on the steps outside the main entrance, Aries seemed to sense my mood. A low growl vibrated in his throat, his dog eyes staring intently at the security guards at the door. Young master, you cannot go inside. 4 burly bodyguards dressed in black instantly blocked the path. The bodyguard captain at the head looked at me with a fake smile. CEO Jennifer has ordered that if the young master comes to attend the press conference, he must first read this letter of apology aloud at the entrance. He handed over a sheet of A4 paper, which was densely packed, with words full of extreme humiliation. Young and ignorant, offended CEO Jennifer, begging for forgiveness. Looking at that piece of paper, I let out a cold laugh. So, this was the extent of Jennifer's petty methods. I let go of the leash in my hand. Aries barked wildly and lunged straight at the bodyguard captain. A purebred golden retriever weighing over 100 pounds possessed incredible explosive power. Terrified, the bodyguard captain stumbled backward repeatedly and landed right on his butt on the steps. Taking advantage of their broken formation, I kicked straight into the back of the knee of the bodyguard beside me, accompanied by a sharp cry of pain. The bodyguard fell to his knees. I picked up the leash from the ground, stepped over the bodyguard's shoulder, and strode through the glass revolving doors. The media hall instantly fell dead silent. Countless camera flashes aimed right at me. On the leather sofa right in the center of the hall, Jennifer sat, dressed in a well-tailored wine-red haute couture suit. Her legs were crossed, and she held a cup of black coffee. Looking down at me from her high position, Julian sat slightly behind her side. The look he gave me completely filled with gloating and poorly concealed jealousy. You actually dare to show up. Jennifer took a sip of her coffee and set the cup down heavily on the table, the porcelain clinking with a sharp sound. Hello, leading Aries. I walked directly to a spot less than 3 meters away from her and stood still. CEO Jennifer put on such a grand display to invite me. Wouldn't I be disrespecting you if I didn't show? I looked at her with cold eyes. Jennifer stood up, her high heels clicking against the marble floor, making sharp click-clack sounds. She walked up to me, looking at me as if looking at a dying insect. Every single project of your family has come to a halt. Mouse's family company is now nothing but an empty shell. You bastard, this is the price you pay for crossing me. Jennifer lowered her voice, her tone carrying the sheer arrogance of someone in absolute control. She extended her finger, pointing at the empty red-carpeted center of the hall. Kneel down right now. Admit you were wrong in front of all the media, and beg me to marry you. If I happen to be in a good mood, I might just leave a way out for both your family and Mouse. The surrounding camera flashes blinked frantically. The reporters were like sharks smelling blood, desperately crowding forward. Julian spoke up from behind in a sarcastic tone. Young master, there's no shame in bowing your head. Jennifer has already been tolerant enough with you. Don't throw her kindness back in her face. I looked at Jennifer's exquisite yet ruthless face, and the excruciating pain of my broken legs from the dream, with the gold-embossed crest of the Vance family printed on its fuselage. I suddenly burst into a loud laugh, my laughter echoing through the spacious hall, making everyone present look at each other in bewilderment. "Jennifer, are you out of your mind?" I abruptly cut off my laughter and stared dead at her. "Do you really think a little bit of dirty money can buy off everyone's backbone? I came here today just to tell you one thing in front of the entire internet." I pointed right at her nose, pronouncing every single word distinctly. "Even if I starve to death, or jump straight off this building, I will absolutely never marry a rotten woman like you. You make me sick." The whole place erupted into an uproar. The sound of the reporter's shutters snapping almost blended together like a torrential downpour. Jennifer's face instantly turned pale with rage. The fury in her eyes looked ready to erupt completely. She was used to my absolute obedience, and she could not accept this kind of public humiliation at all. "Fine, very well." Jennifer gritted her teeth, her chest heaving violently. "Since you want to die, I'll grant your wish." She waved her hand sharply. "Security, hold him down for me. If he doesn't kneel today, break his legs." Over a dozen security guards armed with rubber batons swarmed out. From all directions, Ares let out a deafening, furious bark, fiercely guarding the space right in front of me. I took off my windbreaker, wrapped it around my arm, and took a fighting stance. Right at this critical moment, a deafening roar suddenly came from overhead. The sound grew louder and louder, as if the entire building itself were trembling. Outside the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the hall, a wild gale whipped up. Trees were blown completely sideways, and the car alarms across the plaza screamed wildly. Everyone turned their heads to look in terror. A heavy black private helicopter, with the gold-embossed crest of the Vance family printed on its fuselage, was currently hovering with an overwhelmingly oppressive presence right over the plaza outside the Lou Group. The airflow whipped up by the rotors overturned the billboards outside the entrance. The helicopter touched down steadily, and the cabin door was flung open with force. 2 rows of elite bodyguards dressed in black suits and sunglasses quickly leaped down, moving in perfect unison, instantly setting up a perimeter on both sides of the red carpet. Jennifer's security guards, compared to these people, looked just like a flock of underdeveloped quails, forced back repeatedly by their sheer presence. Right after that, a pair of high heels encrusted with diamond shards stepped out of the cabin. Scarlett Vance, the sole heir to the top-tier tycoon Vance family in the financial elite circle. The legendary woman who controlled more than half of the global cash flow. A woman whose slightest move could cause an earthquake throughout the entire business world. She wore a sharply tailored black trench coat, paired with a dark red silk dress underneath. Her long, seaweed-like hair danced wildly in the wind. On a face beautiful enough to ruin nations, she wore a pair of oversized sunglasses, exuding an extreme aura that warned strangers not to get close. The lobby fell dead silent, save for the whistling sound of the helicopter rotors. Gradually slowing down, Jennifer froze completely. She subconsciously took half a step forward, a deep wave of shock and wariness flashing through her previously arrogant eyes. A CEO of her level wasn't even worthy of wiping the shoes of someone like Scarlett Vance. Scarlett took off her sunglasses and tossed them casually to the assistant behind her. Stepping onto the red carpet, surrounded by a crowd of bodyguards, she walked straight into the hall. The crowd automatically parted to form a wide path. No one dared to stand in her way. Scarlett's gaze swept across the entire hall, and finally landed precisely on me without any mistake. In that exact moment, I clearly caught a flash of an extremely complex emotion in her originally icy eyes. It looked like the wild joy of recovering something lost, yet also like a deep, unforgettable affection. She strode right up to me, and before I could even react, a blast of cold, intense cedar fragrance hit my nose. Scarlett naturally reached out her hand and tightly locked her arm through mine. Her movement was powerful and dominant, yet it carried a barely perceptible tremor. Ares unexpectedly didn't bark at all. Instead, he docilely leaned in and nudged his head against her calf. The entire room gasped. The camera flashes went completely wild. Jennifer's eyes looked ready to pop right out of her head. She pointed at me, her voice trembling. "Ms. Vance, what is the meaning of this? He's nothing but a..." "Shut up." Scarlett didn't even spare Jennifer a single glance. She casually snapped her fingers. And the top-tier lawyer behind her immediately stepped forward, pulling a thick stack of documents from a briefcase and throwing them right onto the coffee table in front of Jennifer. CEO Jennifer, this is the acquisition contract. The lawyer adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses, his tone devoid of any emotion. Vance Capital has, exactly 1 hour ago, through the secondary market and private placements, completed a hostile takeover of all the esports industries under the Lu Group. Not only that, Ms. Vance has already injected $10 billion in cash flow into Mr. Mouse's company. From this moment on, the Vance family holds a 51% stake in that company. Jennifer looked as if she had been struck by lightning. She snatched up the documents on the table and flipped through them rapidly. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. $10 billion in cash flow. How could you possibly mobilize it in such a short amount of time? Jennifer's face turned deathly pale, and with a shake of her hand, she knocked over the coffee cup beside her. The black liquid flowed along the tabletop and dripped onto her expensive haute couture suit, leaving her in utter disgrace. Julian was so terrified that he shrank into the corner of the sofa, not even daring to breathe loudly. Scarlett finally turned her head and cast a cold glance at Jennifer, a look that seemed like she was staring at a pile of garbage. In the financial elite circle, there is nothing the Vance family cannot do. Scarlett's voice was clear and quiet, yet it carried an unyielding, oppressive weight. She turned around, facing the countless camera lenses. Holding my arm even tighter, she tilted her chin up slightly, and every single word she spoke was like a massive bombshell. Listen up, everyone on the internet. Gary is the man protected by me, Scarlett Vance. If he wants to play in the esports industry, I will buy up the entire industry just to play along with him. If he wants to protect his brother, I will take $10 billion to crush anyone who stands against him. Scarlett's gaze was like lightning, piercing right through Jennifer. Whoever dares to touch a single hair on his head is making an enemy of the entire Vance family in the financial elite circle. Jennifer, do you dare to try? Her dominant, arrogant attitude was a total reality check. Jennifer's legs buckled, and she collapsed back onto the sofa. She bit her lip hard, her eyes completely filled with resentment and fear. The wealth she was so proud of was as fragile as a piece of scrap paper in front of Scarlett. I turned my head stiffly, looking at Scarlett, who was right beside me. I didn't know her. I ransacked all of my memories, including those 8 years in the dream, and I was absolutely certain that I had never once crossed paths with this untouchable heiress of a financial tycoon. But as she looked up at me right now, inside those beautiful eyes, there was no longer the icy coldness she showed to the media. Tears shimmered at the bottom of her eyes, carrying a kind of obsession and deep devotion that seemed to transcend life and death. She stood on her tiptoes, her worn breath approaching my ear. Gary, I finally found you. Her voice was extremely low, carrying a hint of a sob. Before I could ask further, she directly pushed me into the helicopter. Over the next half-month, the entire business community of the city experienced a massive earthquake. Scarlett fulfilled her wild promise. With $10 billion of capital smashed down, Mouse's company not only came back from the dead, but it also directly annexed the 3 top esports research and development teams on the market. Taking advantage of this momentum, I immediately established Daybreak Technology. Since I was living this life over again, I wasn't going to be a submissive dog anymore. Instead, I would become a man-eating wolf. I used my family's connections combined with the Vance family's capital to launch a precise attack on the Lu Group's core market. When Jennifer tried to snatch the supply chain of my brother, I spent double the price to buy out all of her upstream channels. When she wanted to stabilize the stock market, I had day traders short their stocks frantically in the secondary market. In just a short 15 days, the Lu Group's market value had evaporated by 1/3. Sitting in the boss's chair of my new office, I stared at the stock market trends on the wall. Mouse pushed the door open and rushed inside, slamming a report heavily onto the desk, laughing so hard his eyes crinkled up. Bro, this is amazing. The new system we just launched directly stole 40% of the Lu Group's market share. Jennifer, that crazy woman, held an executive meeting late last night. Word is, she smashed 3 cups. The Lu Group stock hit its daily limit down again at the opening today. I picked up my black coffee and took a sip, the bitter taste spreading throughout my mouth, a ruthless look flashing in my eyes. This is just the beginning. Once we completely cut off her cash flow, Julian, that leech, won't have any allowance left. For a guy like him, being broke is more painful than taking his life. Sure enough, Julian couldn't sit still anymore. In the afternoon, a gold-embossed invitation was delivered to the front desk. The Elite Charity Gala. My phone vibrated right after. It was an unknown number. I answered, and Julian's signature, manipulative, fake sweet, voice came through. Young Master Gary, you received the gala invitation, right? Jennifer has been in a bad mood lately because of the company's issues. I specifically organized this gala to help her clear her mind. Since you are highly successful now, young Master Gary, you wouldn't refuse to show us even this much respect, right? Leaning back in my swivel chair, my fingers tapped rhythmically against the desktop. Julian, what kind of trick are you trying to play this time? You misunderstand, young Master Gary. I just want to resolve the previous misunderstandings between everyone. After all, the one Jennifer cares about most in her heart is still me. Even if you bankrupt the Lou Group, you will never win her heart. Dumbass. I didn't want to waste my breath, and hung up directly. The office door was pushed open, and Scarlett stepped inside, her high heels clicking. Today, she wore a sharp, silver gray business suit, her long hair tied back behind her head, tossing a mini flash drive in her hand. Was that a phone call from Julian? I nodded. A trap of a dinner party. That bastard probably wants to use the presence of all the elites to set a trap for me. Go. Why shouldn't we go? Scarlett let out a cold laugh, throwing the flash drive onto the desk, making a sharp clinking sound. I just had someone look into Julian's background a bit. The disgusting things this kid has done behind Jennifer's back are dramatic enough to shoot an 80-episode TV series. Tonight, let's go watch the circus show. Looking at the cold light flickering in her eyes, I suddenly felt that when this woman turned ruthless, no one else could even compete. At 8:30 p.m., in the penthouse ballroom of the International Hotel. The moment Scarlett and I stepped through the main entrance, the originally noisy hall fell dead silent for a few seconds. Countless gazes swept over in perfect unison. Scarlett held my arm, her powerful aura fully unleashed, just like a queen patrolling her territory. In the lounge sofa area not far away, Jennifer held a glass of champagne, her expression incredibly ugly. She stared dead at the linked arms between Scarlett and me, her knuckles turning pale white from the sheer force of her grip. Julian stood right beside her, a flash of malicious venom crossing his eyes, which he instantly replaced with a victimized expression as he leaned in and whispered something into her ear. Jennifer's face grew even darker, looking as if she were ready to tear someone apart at any moment. I ignored them completely, took a glass of red wine from a waiter's tray, and walked straight to the second-floor balcony to get some air. Just as I lit a cigarette, the glass door behind me was pushed open. Gary, do you actually think you've won for sure now? Julian walked over holding a wine glass, the pitiful disguise on his face completely shredded, replaced by undisguised jealousy and distortion. I blew out a ring of smoke, looked him up and down, and let out a mocking laugh. Did Jennifer's credit cards get suspended? This suit you're wearing is still last year's old model. What's wrong? Is your easy ride going sour? Can't stomach it anymore? This sentence accurately stepped on Julian's sore spot. His features distorted for a split second, and he forcefully closed the distance by 2 steps. Don't get too arrogant. Jennifer is just facing some temporary difficulties. As long as I am here, she will absolutely never spare you a second glance, even if you have Scarlett backing you up. In Jennifer's eyes, you are still nothing but a piece of trash who isn't even worthy of wiping my shoes. I flicked my cigarette ash, watching him perform like a desperate clown. In the dream, he had used this exact same untouchable face to stomp on my broken legs and mock me. Now, he could only use these low-class words to mask the panic deep inside his heart. Are you done? If you're done, get the hell out. Don't be an eyesore here. Julian suddenly gave a bizarre, eerie smile. He glanced left and right, ensuring there was no one around, and quickly reached his hand into his suit pocket. I narrowed my eyes, my muscles instantly tensing up, thinking he was going to pull out some kind of weapon. Instead, he pulled out 2 small fast food-style ketchup packets. Under my astonished gaze, Julian ripped open the packets without a shred of hesitation and smeared the red sauce all over his forehead and cheeks. Next, he suddenly grabbed his own collar, yanked hard, and ripped open his shirt, sending the buttons flying everywhere. Gary, what are you doing? Mask, help. Julian suddenly let out a sharp, tragic shriek, and his entire body forcefully threw itself backward. The second-floor balcony. was connected to a flight of over a dozen spiral stairs. He just tumbled down the stairs like that, looking just like a broken sack of garbage, rolling down over and over. Julian crashed heavily onto the carpet of the first floor hall, clutching his head and rolling all over the ground. The bright red sauce seeped through his fingers, covering his entire face. The hall instantly erupted into chaos. The music came to a dead stop. The elites cried out in shock and scattered. "Julian!" A sharp, piercing shriek cut through the hall. Jennifer pushed through the crowd like a madwoman, scrambling and crawling until she threw herself right beside Julian. "Julian, how are you?" "Don't scare me." Jennifer's hands trembled, not even daring to touch his blood-soaked face. Julian weakly opened his eyes, tears streaming down his face in huge drops. He raised his trembling hand, pointing right at me, standing at the top of the stairs. "Jennifer, I just wanted to persuade young Master Gary to stop targeting the company, but he suddenly went crazy, insulting me as a gold digger, and he pushed me down. My head hurts." After speaking, his head tilted to the side, and he closed his eyes to play dead. Jennifer snapped her head up, her eyes completely bloodshot. As she stared dead at me, inside her gaze flickered a madness that wished she could hack me into 1,000 pieces. Stepping in her high heels, she strode over to the bottom of the stairs, pointed right at my nose, and cursed furiously, "Gary, you absolute beast. Julian's health was already poor to begin with, yet you actually laid such a ruthless hand on him. Do you think just because the Vance family backs you up, you can commit murder and arson in this city?" Standing on the steps, I looked down at this woman whom I had once cherished like a precious treasure, and my heart felt nothing but absolute disgust. "Jennifer, did you leave your brain at home when you went out? Look at the blood on his head and smell it before you speak. You still dare to make excuses?" Jennifer lost her mind completely, turning around to roar at the security guards, "Call the police. Call the police right now. I want him to rot in prison for the rest of his life. I want him to pay for what he did to Julian with his life." The surrounding elites whispered and pointed fingers at me, the critical murmurs growing louder and louder. I scratched my ear, without even the slightest desire to explain myself. When dealing with a fool like this, speaking even a single word was a waste of breath. Right at that moment, a burst of crisp high-heel clicks came from the other side of the hall. Click, click, click. The rhythm was unhurried, yet it carried an overwhelming aura. Scarlett walked calmly into the center of the crowd, with composure, holding a glass of red wine. She didn't even spare a glance at Julian on the floor, meeting Jennifer's fiery gaze directly. "CEO Jennifer, what a mighty display of authority. Talking about making my man rot in prison at the drop of a hat." Scarlett gave a soft laugh, swirling the red wine glass in her hand. The bright, red liquid reflected a cold light under the illumination. In front of all these witnesses, Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "Then let's all take a look together at what exactly happened in front of these witnesses." She casually handed the wine glass to the assistant behind her, pulled a black mini-terminal out of her clutch bag, and tapped her fingers rapidly across the screen a few times. On the main stage of the ballroom, the massive LED screen suddenly flickered once. The charity promotional video originally playing vanished instantly, replaced instead by a split screen showing 4 high-definition surveillance feeds. The security system of this hotel just so happened to use the base architecture of Vance technology. Scarlett raised her head, aiming right at Jennifer. As she flashed an intensely mocking smile, "CEO Jennifer, let me show you something fun." She pressed the play button. The footage on the big screen was crystal clear, and even the audio recording was absolutely perfect. In the video, I was standing on the balcony smoking a cigarette, and Julian approached to provoke me. Right after, he glanced left and right, pulled out ketchup packets from his pocket. The big screen even thoughtfully provided a close-up zoom. Enlarged, Julian ripped open the ketchup and smeared it on his own face, then ripped off his own buttons, let out a shriek, and threw himself backward with extreme theatricality. The entire sequence of movements was as smooth as flowing water. The frame froze right on his distorted, comical face as he was smearing the ketchup. The entire ballroom fell dead silent for 3 seconds. Then, someone couldn't hold it in first, and snorted out loud with a laugh. Right after that, the entire room burst into a roar of laughter. "Oh my God, holy crap. Ketchup? Man, Oscar owes this guy a golden statue." Ripping his own clothes and rolling down the stairs himself, this scam technique is absolutely brilliant. I'm dying of laughter. How did CEO Jennifer end up keeping such a clown? The mocking laughter drowned out Jennifer like a tsunami. She froze right in place, the anger on her face solidifying instantly. Before transforming into extreme shock and embarrassment, Julian on the floor snapped his eyes open. He looked at the footage looping on the big screen, his face turning deathly pale in an instant. Scrambling and crawling, he tried to stand up. "It's not like this, Jennifer. Listen to my explanation. This surveillance footage is fake. They fabricated it." Julian spoke incoherently, as he reached out to grab the hem of Jennifer's dress. Jennifer subconsciously took a step back. Slapping his hand away, she looked down at the puddle on the floor. That emitted a sweet and sour smell of ketchup. Jennifer's stomach churned violently. I walked down the stairs and stopped right in front of Julian. "The surveillance footage can be faked. But what about these things?" I raised my hand and slammed a thick manila envelope hard against Julian's face. Smack! The envelope burst open, and hundreds of photos, bank statements printed on A4 paper, and explicit chat history screenshots flew all over the place like snowflakes, fluttering down right around Jennifer's feet. I pointed at those papers scattered on the floor, my voice as cold as ice. "Julian, you took the allowance money Jennifer gave you and used it outside to simultaneously support 5 escorts. The villa in the South City, the yacht at the bay, all of it was billed directly to the Lou Group's corporate accounts. Even the Hermes bags you bought for those women had their delivery addresses set to the Lou Group headquarters." With every sentence I spoke, Julian's body shuddered violently. Jennifer's entire body went rigid. She slowly lowered her head, her gaze landing on a chat screenshot that happened to drift down, right by her feet. In the photo, Julian was holding a scantily clad woman, the caption reading, "Baby, Jennifer. That stupid woman gave me money again. See you tonight at the usual place." Right next to it was a bank statement, the transfer amount totaling $5 million, and the exact timestamp. Was the very day the Lou Group's capital chain snapped, leaving Jennifer begging everyone for help. Not only that, Scarlett walked forward to stand side by side with me, delivering the final, icy blow. "CEO Jennifer, you probably didn't know, but half a month ago, Julian also lost $30 million at a Macau casino. He took out high-interest loan sharks to pay this debt, using several properties under your name as collateral. Counting down the time, the debt collectors should be hanging protest banners at the Lou Group building by tomorrow." Jennifer's face was completely drained of color. Her lips trembled violently, a strange, choking sound coming from her throat, yet she couldn't utter a single word. The love she was so proud of, the man she had used all her strength to protect, even at the cost of offending my entire family. At this moment, his true colors were stripped so bare he didn't even have underwear left. "Jennifer, don't listen to their nonsense. I was framed. I love you, Jennifer." Julian broke down completely, lunging over to tightly grab Jennifer's legs, crying with snot and tears streaming down his face. Jennifer didn't move. She lowered her head, staring dead at the ironclad evidence scattered all over the floor. Those unbearable photos and bills were like sharp knives, completely shredding the beliefs she had built up for years. She slowly raised her head to look at Julian, but her eyes no longer held their past tenderness and pity. Replaying in their place was a hair-raising, estranged shock, and a suspicion that was spreading frantically. Looking at this man she had protected with her life, a terrifying thought suddenly flashed through her mind. If all of this was true, then what on earth was the purpose of Julian staying by her side? Those instigations against my family, those so-called grievances. Just how deep of a scheme was hidden behind them? "Get off me." Jennifer violently kicked Julian right in the chest, her sharp stiletto heel slicing a bloody gash directly across Julian's expensive custom shirt. Her entire body shook, and without even picking up her limited-edition clutch that had fallen to the floor, she stumbled and rushed out of the ballroom. I watched this scene with cold eyes, swirled the red wine glass in my hand, threw my head back, and drained it in one gulp. Scarlett tilted her head, leaning close to my ear with a soft laugh. The good show has only just begun. That night, in the VIP ward of the City First Hospital, Jennifer was running a high fever of 104 degrees, plunging entirely into an endless nightmare. The dream was like an inescapable torment. Sky-high flames consumed the entire villa, and the scorching heat waves almost seared her skin. Julian stood outside the door, tossing a solid gold lighter in his hand. His originally refined and gentle face now distorted like a vicious demon. "Old woman, I've already transferred all your money. Go to hell." He laughed maniacally, turning around to put his arm around a young girl as they got into a sports car. The beams crashed down, and the fierce flames burned her body. Jennifer was pinned beneath the ruins, thick smoke filling her lungs. Just as she was waiting for death in utter despair, the villa's crumbling iron gate was smashed open by brute force. Covered in blood, I dragged the crippled leg she had personally broken, and crawled toward her inch by inch through the sea of fire. My clothes were scorched, my flesh torn apart, leaving a shocking trail of blood behind me. Using all my strength, I used my body to prop up a burning support beam, fiercely shielding her beneath me. "Jennifer, don't be afraid. I'll get you out." "No!" Jennifer shrieked and bolted upright from the hospital bed, cold sweat soaking through her silk pajamas, her heart aching with a violent contraction, as if being torn apart by an invisible hand. Gasping heavily for breath, her vision was entirely filled with the sight of me burned to charcoal in the sea of fire. That wasn't a dream. That heartbreaking sense of reality was clearly the past life that she had failed to realize. Trembling, she grabbed the phone from the bedside table and dialed the private investigator's number. "Investigate everything about Julian's background over the past few years. Turn it completely upside down for me, even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground. Find those account books for me." 3 days later, a thick manila envelope was slammed onto the table in front of Jennifer's hospital bed. The private investigator had a solemn expression, keeping his breathing very low. "CEO Jennifer, Julian didn't just embezzle corporate funds. He bought a hidden villa in the suburbs, where he keeps 7 or 8 young men." Jennifer's pupils shrank violently. "Men?" The investigator handed over several secretly taken photos. "The features of these people, their statures, and even their tone of voice, are all deliberately imitating young Master Gary. In private, Julian required them to wear the exact same style of clothing as young Master Gary. And even their hairstyles are identical." Jennifer flipped open the photos, her fingers freezing instantly. In the photos, Julian was holding a leather belt, frantically whipping a boy who looked strikingly like me, his face full of a sick pleasure and jealousy. He was using this disgusting method to vent his hatred toward me, while satisfying his own twisted self-esteem. Also, the investigator handed over the final encrypted report. The core technological assets of the Lu Group were already utilized by Julian last night. Using the highest clearance level you provided, they have all been transferred to shell companies in the Cayman Islands. Right now, the corporate accounts only have a pile of bad debts left that are about to blow up. The documents fell from her hands to the floor. Jennifer clutched her chest, a sharp, agonizing wail coming from her throat. The sea of fire from the past life, and the betrayal of the present life, intertwined into a rusty, blunt knife, slicing her soul wide open while she was still alive. She had mistaken a leech for true love, pouring out everything she owned to support a beast. Yet she had personally broken the legs of the only man in this world who would lay down his life to love her, pushing him into an abyss of eternal damnation. "Gary, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." She curled up on the hospital bed, biting the corner of the blanket tightly, wailing and crying out loud, like a stray dog whose spine had been ripped out. At the exact same time, in the penthouse office of Daybreak Technology, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the brilliant night view of the city. Scarlett leaned against the sofa, her fingers sliding rapidly across her tablet. Julian realized that Jennifer is investigating him, and he's preparing to flee the country. However, his overseas accounts have already been completely frozen by the connections I mobilized. I turned around, a cold light flickering in my eyes. A cornered dog will leap over a wall. He will definitely fight back. The lesson of my broken legs from the past life was etched into my bones. I would absolutely never fall into the same trap twice. He has already put out a $50 million bounty on the underground black market. Scarlett stood up and walked to my side. A trace of bloodthirsty excitement flashed deep in her eyes. "The targets are you and me. Midnight tonight, at the suburban villa. He hired desperate thugs and is preparing to make a move." I let out a cold laugh, pulled out the pure black military dagger from my waist, and flipped the blade skillfully through my fingertips. "Then let's close the door and unleash the dogs." Midnight, 12 o'clock. A wild gale howled around the suburban villa, making the shadows of the trees sway violently. 3 unmarked vans quietly pulled up outside the wall of the villa's backyard. Over a dozen masked, burly men, armed with machetes and high-voltage stun batons, scaled the courtyard wall and headed straight for the main house. "Move faster," the client said, "to break the man's legs and kidnap the woman directly." The scarred-faced leader lowered his voice and kicked open the door to the master bedroom. The bed was completely empty. "Looking for me?" I sat in the shadows at the top of the second-floor stairs, tossing a lighter in my hand. Ares lay by my feet, letting out a low growl from his throat, his dog eyes staring dead at this group of uninvited guests. The scarred-faced leader froze for a second, then raised his machete and roared. Before his words could even land, the floodlights of the entire villa instantly flared to blinding brightness. The piercing, intense light blinded the assassins so badly they couldn't even open their eyes. Dozens of fully armed bodyguards in black swarmed out from all directions, their pitch-black gun barrels aiming right at this group of desperate thugs. Scarlett Vance wore a sharp, black tactical suit as she slowly walked down from the second floor, holding a tactical, collapsible baton with a blood groove. "Just based on you sewer rats, you actually dare to touch my man?" Scarlett twisted her neck and waved her arm down. "Cripple them." In less than 3 minutes, the fight was over. The limbs of over a dozen assassins were broken, and they lay wailing in a pool of blood. A heavy scent of blood permeated the air. I walked over to the scarred face leader, stomped my foot right onto his chest, and pressed the dagger against his carotid artery. "Where is Julian?" Terrified out of his mind, the scarred face leader pissed his pants, his voice shaking. At the abandoned dock in the eastern suburbs. He's taking a smuggling boat to flee the country tonight. At 2000 a.m., at the eastern suburbs dock. The sea breeze carried a heavy, salty stench. Julian was holding a black briefcase, waiting anxiously on the pier. Just as the engine roar of a distant speedboat sounded, several powerful searchlights instantly tore through the dark night, locking him firmly right in place. A police car wailed as it arrived, completely surrounding the dock. Scarlett and I stepped down from an SUV. Gary, Julian's legs turned to jelly, and he fell to his knees on the ground with a thud. The briefcase burst open, and the bundles of cash inside, along with several gold bars scattered all over the ground. Suspected of embezzlement, major fraud, and premeditated murder. I walked up to him, looking down at his trembling, shaking form. I let out a cold laugh. "Julian, spend the rest of your life reflecting properly inside a prison cell." "No, you can't arrest me. I am Jennifer's fiancé. You guys are framing me." Julian screamed and shouted like a madman. Desperately crawling backward, 2 SWAT officers stepped forward and pinned both his arms behind his back, the ice-cold handcuffs snapping directly around his wrists. "Behave yourself." An officer kicked him in the back of the knee, forcefully pinning him up. Julian squealed like a slaughtered pig as he was dragged into the police car screaming. The sirens blared loudly, completely shattering all of his beautiful dreams. 3 days later, a torrential downpour came down. The television news broadcasted the headlines on loop. The Liu Group, due to a broken capital chain and the loss of its core assets, has officially declared bankruptcy and liquidation. All assets under the name of Chairman Jennifer have been officially seized according to the law. I sat on the leather sofa in the villa's living room, Ares obediently lying right by my slippers. Scarlett walked over holding 2 glasses of mulled wine, handed me one, and cast her gaze out the floor-to-ceiling window. "She's here." Holding my glass, I walked over to the window. Outside the black iron gate, Jennifer was completely soaked. She didn't use an umbrella, and that haute couture suit that once symbolized power and status was now covered in mud and water, her messy hair plastered against her pale face. That once untouchable, arrogant top female CEO of the city was now clutching the iron gate tightly like a beggar and fell to her knees toward the villa entrance. Thud, she gave a heavy kowtow, her forehead smashing against the waterlogged stone floor, splashing up a wave of mud. "Gary, I was wrong. I beg you, just see me once." The wild wind blended with the heavy rain, yet it couldn't drown out her sharp, despairing cries. Thud, another loud kowtow. Blood mixed with rainwater streamed down her cheeks, looking absolutely shocking. "I remember everything now. The fire in the past life. You were the one who saved me. I was fooled by that beast Julian. I must have been blind to hurt you. Can you please forgive me? Let's start over. I will listen to whatever you say. I'll work myself to the bone for you." I looked at this scene coldly, threw my head back to finish the wine in my glass, and grabbed a black umbrella from the foyer. Scarlett followed me, naturally linking her arm through mine. The main door pushed open, and I opened the black umbrella, holding Scarlett tightly against me. As we walked step by step toward the iron gate, hearing the footsteps, Jennifer snapped her head up, staring at the figure of Scarlett and me leaning close together. Extreme agony and jealousy flashed deep in her eyes. Using both her hands and feet, she crawled toward the iron gate, desperately reaching her hands through the gaps in the bars, trying to grab the cuff of my pants. Gary, you still have me in your heart, right? You loved me so much before. You planted the entire yard with blue campanulas. You would even give your life for me. You're just angry with me right now, aren't you? She cried so hard, her features distorted. Tears and muddy water mixing together, disgrace to the absolute limit. I took half a step back, avoiding her mud-stained hands. Rainwater dripped down along the black ribs of the umbrella. I looked down from above at the woman in the mud, the excruciating pain of my broken legs from the past life, and the despair of being burned by the fire, finally dissolved completely at this moment, leaving behind nothing but an icy, dead silence. I looked into her eyes, pronouncing every single word distinctly, returning the exact words she had said while stepping on my broken legs in a past life. What makes you think you're worthy? You're not even fit to dirty my eyes. Jennifer's entire body began to shake violently. As if struck by lightning, she froze right in place, her pupils instantly dilating, her mouth open yet unable to make a single sound. I turned around, putting my arm around Scarlett's shoulder, and walked back toward that warm, bright entrance without looking back. With a loud bang, the heavy carved iron gate slammed shut forcefully, completely shutting out the heavy rain and Jennifer's sharp wails from the outside world. I casually tossed the black umbrella into the umbrella stand by the door, and took off my coat, which was slightly damp from the mist. Scarlett handed over a warm, dry towel, and naturally wiped away the trace of rainwater from my temples. It's all been dealt with completely. She's just a lunatic now. It's not worth wasting any time on her. I took the towel and wiped my hands. The searing pain from the fire in my past life, along with the humiliation brought by the leg she broke, the exact second I watched Jennifer kneeling in the mud and kowtowing just now, completely vanished into thin air. I didn't hate her anymore, because now she didn't even have the right to make me hate her. The phone in my pocket vibrated. Mouse's loud voice blasted straight through the speaker. Bro, this is incredibly satisfying. The verdict for that bastard Julian has been handed down. Embezzlement, grand larceny, plus attempted contract murder. With multiple charges combined, he got a straight life sentence. He is officially locked behind bars for the rest of his miserable life. I walked over to the bar counter and poured myself half a glass of ice water. He's inside now. The people in there won't take good care of him. That goes without saying, Mouse laughed with sheer malice. Do you remember that loan shark broken tooth he provoked? When he borrowed money in Macau before? That guy went inside. A few years ago. And just happened to be assigned to Julian's cell block. On that bastard's very first night inside, Broken Tooth's men pinned him down in the latrine pit and forced half a bucket of boiling water down his throat. Now he's forced to scrub the toilets of several cells every single day. If he moves a little too slow, he gets a brutal beating. I heard 2 of his ribs were broken yesterday, and he lay on the floor not even daring to let out a single groan. It's a fate worse than death. I threw my head back and drained the ice water in the glass, my Adam's apple bobbing. Keep him alive. Dying would be way too easy for him. Hanging up the phone, the living room fell silent. Aries lay on the wool rug next to the fireplace, letting out steady, rhythmic snores. The orange flames flickered up and down, dispelling the chill of late autumn. Scarlett walked over holding 2 glasses of warm milk, and handed me one. She didn't sit in the armchair like she usually did. Instead, she sat right down next to me, curling up her long legs, and resting her chin on her knees. Staring at the flames in the fireplace, her gaze suddenly became incredibly profound. Gary, have you always felt that my appearance out of nowhere was completely bizarre? Scarlett spoke softly, her voice sounding exceptionally gentle in the quiet living room. I turned my head to look at her. On that beautiful face, the ruthless decisiveness she showed when facing the media and her business rivals had entirely faded away. At this moment, it was soaked in a heartbreaking vulnerability. A little bit, I answered honestly. The eldest daughter of the Vance family, a top heiress of the financial world, spending $10 billion just to back a rejected playboy like me. Whoever this happened to would think it was a dream. Scarlett suddenly smiled. She set down the milk glass in her hand, and slowly rolled up the silk sleeve of her left arm, on the inner side of her fair forearm. An incredibly ugly, dark red, old burn scar stretched out visibly. My pupils shrank violently. With the Vance family's wealth and medical resources, how could she possibly keep a scar like this without removing it? I wasn't some eldest daughter of the Vance family, who was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Scarlett extended her fingertips, gently tracing that scar, her tone drifting as if it came from another dimension. In the past life, I was just a girl who didn't even have a name. My entire body shuddered, and I stared dead into her eyes. That winter, it snowed so heavily in the city. I had a high fever and went hungry for 3 days and 3 nights, curled up next to a trash pile under a bridge, waiting to die. Scarlett's eyes quickly turned red, tears pooling at the bottom of her eyes. Everyone thought I was filthy, and avoided me. Only you, she turned her head and stared dead at me, huge tears splashing down onto the back of her hand. You were wearing a black trench coat that day, holding a black umbrella. You walked right up to me, took off the cashmere coat you were wearing, and wrapped it around me. You stuffed a hot boxed meal into my hands, along with a stack of cash, patted my head, and said to me, "Little girl, your life belongs to you. Don't give up so easily. Live on well." I froze right in place, my mind racing. The memories of the past life flooded in like a tidal wave. There really was such an incident. That was the first time Jennifer had a massive fight with me, over that bastard Julian. I was wandering the streets, completely disheartened, and casually saved the little beggar who was about to freeze to death. Afterward, my mind was entirely filled with Jennifer, so I hadn't taken this matter to heart at all. Later, the Vance family found me. I fought with everything I had to climb to the top, stepping over the bones of countless people. Before I finally took the position of the ruler of the Vance family, Scarlett's voice began to tremble violently. She suddenly grabbed my wrist, her fingernails almost digging into my flesh. "I brought the entire Vance family back to find you, wanting to repay you, but all I saw was your charred corpse." She suddenly broke down completely, lunging fiercely into my embrace, her arms tightly locking around my waist. As she wailed and cried out loud, "I watched that idiot Jennifer cause your death. I watched you get burned to charcoal just to protect her. I wished I could kill every single one of them. God gave me a second chance at life, and I swore. In this life, Scarlett Vance lives only for you alone. Whoever dares to touch a single hair on your head, I will make sure they leave no corpse behind." My heart felt as if it were being struck heavily by a massive hammer. I lowered my head, looking at the person in my arms. This powerful, formidable woman who could turn over clouds and summon rain in the business world was currently shivering all over, like a little girl who lacked any sense of security. A tiny bit of kindness casually given away in the past life had actually exchanged for an obsession that transcended life and death. I slowly raised my arms, wrapping them around her shoulders, forcefully pulling her deep into my embrace. My chin rested against the top of her head, my nose enveloped by the crisp, cold scent of cedar on her body. "Don't cry anymore. I've already collected the debts from the past life. From now on, it's my turn to protect you." Scarlett raised her head, looking at me with a face covered in tears. Inside those beautiful eyes, a passion hot enough to melt glaciers was burning. She suddenly leaned close, cupping my face with both her hands, closed her eyes, and kissed me. There was no testing the waters, no hesitation, only an absolute possessiveness and the madness of a mutual devotion. I took control, cupping the back of her head, to deepen the kiss. Outside the window, the torrential rain still raged, while the temperature inside the room climbed drastically. Half a year later, on a private island in the Seychelles, for the marriage alliance between my family and the elite Vance family, the entire island had been booked out directly. This globally sensational wedding of the century redefined the meaning of luxury for everyone. 12 heavy helicopters hovered over the island, pouring down millions of top-grade Bulgarian rose petals flown in by air, showering them down. Across the entire island, a rain of crimson romance fell across the entire island. I was wearing an Italian, handmade custom white tuxedo, standing at the flower-covered altar. On camera, Grandpa sat in the seat of honor, laughing so hard his mouth wouldn't shut, the walnuts in his hand replaced by a pair of top-grade, imperial green jade pieces. Mouse stood right next to me in his best man suit, rubbing his hands together in excitement. The wedding march began to play, and Scarlett Vance, wearing a haute couture wedding dress encrusted with 9,999 South African diamond shards, and bearing the diamond crown passed down for a century in the Vance family, linked her arm through old Master Vance's, and walked step by step toward me over the petals. The sea breeze whipped up her veil, her drop-dead gorgeous face wearing a queen-like pride, as well as an ultimate tenderness reserved exclusively for me. Old Master Vance solemnly placed her hand into my palm. "Gary, my granddaughter has a bit of a temper. Be patient with her in the future." The old man patted the back of my hand. I tightly held Scarlett's hand, our fingers closely interlocked. "Don't worry, Grandpa. I'll protect her with my life." During the ring exchange segment, over 100 live streaming platforms across the internet synced up, and hundreds of millions of netizens flooded into the broadcast rooms, the comments covering the screen in a dense wall of text. Scarlett was in no rush to put the ring on me. She turned around, took the microphone from the bridesmaid, and faced the entire crowd of guests and the countless camera lenses. "Today is my wedding day, according to the rules of the Vance family. A bride brings a dowry." She snapped her fingers. Behind the altar, a humongous holographic projection screen lit up instantly, distinctly displaying an asset transfer agreement notarized by a top-tier global lawyer team. I announced that the $100 billion estate under the Vance family, including all core technology patents, overseas trust funds, and global real estate, will serve as my dowry. From this day forward, all of it is unconditionally transferred to Mr. Gary's name. The whole place fell dead silent, and even the sound of the ocean waves seemed to freeze for an instant. The next second, the entire wedding venue erupted completely. Guests stood up crying out in shock, the applause thundering. The all-mine broadcast rooms instantly crashed into a brief paralysis due to traffic overload. Holy crap. $100 billion dowry. CEO Scarlett is magnificent. This isn't just getting married. This is directly gifting a business empire. Young Master Gary must have saved the galaxy in his past life. I looked at the woman in front of me, shook my head helplessly, and lowered my voice. "You gave me the entire family fortune. Who's going to support the family from now on?" Scarlett hooked her arms around my neck, smiling like a cunning little fox. "Boss Gary is the richest man now. From now on, of course it's you who supports me." I wrapped my arm around her slender, flexible waist and pulled her toward me. The drone fleet rapidly shifted formations in the night sky, spelling out the giant characters for Gary and Scarlett, before turning into brilliant fireworks filling the sky, amid the deafening cheers, and the camera flashes flickering like a sea of stars. I lowered my head and deeply kissed my bride. The scene shifted. At the abandoned waste treatment plant in the old city district of the city, the wild wind whipped up a torrential rain, brutally lashing the muddy streets. The air was filled with a sickening, sour, rotten stench. Jennifer was dressed in tattered rags, crawling next to a green trash can. Her long hair, which she used to maintain so perfectly, was now knotted like dried grass, her face covered in black mud and unknown filth. That haute couture suit had long since rotted into a few pieces of rags, barely covering her emaciated body. "Get away. This is mine." An animalistic howl came from Jennifer's throat. She held tightly to half a moldy bun in her hand, while her other hand frantically swung a broken wooden stick, driving away 3 snarling stray dogs. A wild dog suddenly lunged forward, biting into her calf. Jennifer let out a sharp shriek, picked up a broken brick from the ground, and smashed it frantically against the wild dog's head. The wild dog wailed and backed away. She collapsed, sitting in the foul-smelling muddy water, her hands trembling, as she held up that moldy bun covered in dirt and sand, devouring it and stuffing it into her mouth. The coarse food scraped her esophagus, and she dry-heaved violently even as she ate. Right at that moment, the giant LED on the exterior wall of the shopping mall across the street suddenly lit up. The intense white light stung Jennifer's eyes. She slowly raised her head. The screen was currently broadcasting that globally sensational wedding of the century. Amid the flying Bulgarian rose petals, I stood in a crisp white tuxedo, dotingly kissing and embracing Scarlett Vance, who was dressed in a diamond-encrusted wedding dress. Below, scrolling in piercing red block letters, the Vance family's $100 billion fortune serves as the dowry. Young Master Gary and CEO Scarlett are happily wed. The bun in Jennifer's mouth dropped into the muddy water. She stared blankly at the screen, her pupils shrinking violently. The radiant man on the screen, who was receiving the blessings of the entire world, was originally supposed to belong to her. The memories of the past life tore through her brain like a meat grinder. The boy who, in the torrential rain, planted a whole yard of blue campanulas for her. The man whose leg she personally broke, yet who still gritted his teeth and refused to beg for mercy. The fool who, in the sky-high sea of fire, used his own charred flesh and blood to block the falling support beam for her. Gary, Jennifer's mud-covered fingers, dug into the cracks of the stone floor. Her fingernails ripped right off, blood gushing out. She had personally destroyed the only man in this world who would lay down his life to love her. For the sake of Julian, that blood-sucking beast, she had crushed a piece of flawless jade into the mud, ultimately ending up with her family ruined, her wealth gone, and herself displaced on the streets. Ha 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 ha. Jennifer suddenly threw her head back, letting out an incredibly sharp, despairing, miserable laugh. The laughter echoed over the empty garbage station, sounding even more terrifying than a ghost's wail. She violently crawled up from the muddy water, stumbling and rushing toward that massive screen. That's mine. That's my man. Give him back to me. She frantically waved her hands, trying to grab the distant, unreachable figure on the screen. Her foot slipped, and her entire body pitched forward, face first into the filthy, waste-filled ditch right next to her. The foul-smelling sewage instantly flooded into her mouth and nose. She didn't struggle. She just lay at the bottom of the ditch like a lump of rotten mud, her hands clutching her head, as she let out bursts of hysterical, unhinged snickers in the heavy rain. The rainwater washed over the filth on her body, yet it could never wash away the regret and insanity rooted deep in her bones. The end. Please like and follow if you enjoyed this story. This account will continue updating novel and comic recaps.